Most founders raise capital the most slowest and expensive way possible, by selling piece of their company. And you know that, here's the truth, you don't need equity to fuel your growth. And why does it matter? Because we all need money as founders. Founders chase money because we need money to grow. And equity is the first thing that pops in my mind, right? So it's not risky, it's quick. I know people around. The other founder is fundraising with VC funds and there's no pressure. Briefly about me, I'm an Ernst & Young auditor, ex-CFO, and I'm an entrepreneur for the last 10 years. I can fundraise more than 100 million euros for more than 1,000 companies, and today I'm sharing the knowledge I have based on what I've seen with all the successful and not successful case studies. So the agenda for today is why and what's debt fundraising, what founders should be using and not, how banks and lenders are evaluating your company, the mindset and the math behind it, how the process looks like. So what it is, the problem is that people think that the debt is being in trouble, right? If you borrow, you're in trouble, you're bad. No, someone asked Kawasaki, the Rich Father book, and how much money do you own? He says, I own 1.2 billion euros or dollars to the bank, and it's a bank's problem, it's not my problem. So we have these ideas that, debt is bad. And why? Because nobody teaches you financial literacy, right? The school, high school, other founders, we don't know it. And the right way to think about it is when you borrow money from a bank, a lender gives you money to grow, and you don't give any equity, any ownership at all. You keep control and you pay the money over the time with the interest from your revenue that you generate. So it's a tool, right? It's not a burden, it's a tool if it used correctly. It amplifies your unit economics. So if your LTV to CAC ratio is good, if your unit economics is good, then you can use it to grow your company. So basically, bank gives you money, you give it back, principal plus interest rate. So there's a case study. Let's say you're owner of a manufacturing company, 4 million assets and 10 million in revenue. So you need 1.2 million to build a new plant. So what to do? You call a friend, he says, I can give you money, but I want 30% in your company. Would you take it? So majority would say yes, because most of the people that go there, and we can see that in the numbers, there are $5 to $8 trillion funding gap per year in a debt funding world. So banks have the money, we just don't know how to borrow it, right? But before saying yes to your potential co-founder, investor, you go to the bank, you ask, how much can you give me? They say, yes, we can give you, it costs you 6% per annum, and you keep 100% equity, and you double your revenue in 2 years. So statistically, mathematically, at 10% margins, it's 1.4 million with 100% full ownership of your company, or it's the same amount of money you make every year, but you have 70% stake. Does it ring a bell? So second, when you should use the debt. The problem is that most people don't know when to do that. Now, so they're either too late or too early. Too early means you don't have any assets, nothing is being used to be backed up for that loan. Too late means that you're running out of the cash flow. Why is that? Because we don't know the mechanics and the timeline, how long it takes to raise the money. So you need to think about that. When you use the debt, we have some traction. You have revenue, assets, equity, right? You have stable revenue at least 6 months. You want to protect your ownership. The right time to use that when you have revenue, we can use as guarantee for invoice financing or revenue-based financing. And when you need equipment, capex financing, EPC financing, working capital, that's the best way to go for bank financing for debt. So you use it when you earn by borrowing money. So there's a case study. Let's say you have an e-commerce shop, you need 300K to buy stock. So your money cycle is 3 months. It means from the moment that the first euro goes into your account, in 3 months you earn from it. So it's called a cycle, right? So net margin 3% per cycle, and bank offers you a loan at 6% per year. Would you take it? Now think about that. In 1 year, it's 4 cycles, 3 months. It's 12% net margin per year. And the money costs 6%. So mathematically, it means you have 6% left. And it's 18,000 extra net profit for your business. So the math shows sometimes it's very convenient to borrow. Next one, how lenders evaluate your company. The problem is that banks care about the numbers, but founders care about the vision, the strategy, the goals, right? So we don't like the spreadsheet, the Excels, the balance sheet, the P&L statements. We just like the vision. We have different world, different context, different instruments and perception. So this is the biggest gap, right, between the banks and the founders. So what to do? First, you need to understand how banks evaluate you. They took at your revenue and take from 10 to 30% as the maximum loan that can be given against that revenue, because they calculate how much money you can give back. Then they took a look, profitably yes or no, it's a binary one. Again, of course, they took at the EBITDA, more specific cases. Cash flow stability assets, like for asset-backed financing, they took at your assets that you have on the balance sheet, they evaluate that, and they can give you from 30 to 80%, depending on the place and liquidity of that asset, they can give as a loan. Then they took at your equity, right? Of course you need equity, right? Because you start with your own money, then you borrow from friends, family, fools, you maybe find some investor. Banks will never take the first risk. Bank always wants to be the second, the third, in the balance, but they want to be the first to get the money. So they don't want to take the risks at all. So the key question is, can this company comfortably repay the loan? This is what the bank is thinking when they communicate with you. So there's a case study. Let's have your land. This is actually a real case, one of my customers. So you have permits and docs in the place. It's your first project, you're a businessman, in another business, you want to just develop real estate. So you have nothing more what to do. The land is worth 2 million euros. So the banks are saying, okay, you need to put 30% equity on the table, and we have the loan to construction cost financing, right? And it costs 5% per annum. So I need to find some equity, even though I have a land, and then I can go for the project. There are alternative lenders. They say, okay, we're ready to give 70% from the land property, but it will cost you 12% per annum. Now, what I've heard from most of the founders, they say, it's too much, 12% is too much. I mean, guys, it's all relative. What's too much? If I earn 100% margin, 12% is nothing compared to 100. If my margin is 1% and I borrow at 12, then I make a loss every cycle for 11%. Doesn't make sense. So it's all relative, it depends. What the customer did in this case. So we went to all the banks. Of course, banks said no. We went to the alternative banks. So the customer took 1.4 million. He started building the property. The value increased. He borrowed more. So the more you build, the more value, the more you borrow. He started selling flats, and in 2 years, he has 91% done and 30% of reservations. So without that, he'll be standing still in the place and looking for a partner. And this guy didn't want any partners in equity. And this is how he got his project funded. The fourth one, math and mindset behind the debt. So the problem is that we all fear of something. We fear of debt because we don't understand the math behind it. We're too emotional, right? We think not strategically, but emotionally about the money. Debt works when you have return on capital, which is higher than cost of capital. Just always open a calculator and put your margin and the cost of capital. Does it make sense? Yes or no? Because it's all risks. I mean, having new supplier, it's a risk. Hiring a player, it's a risk, right? I don't know, changing accountancy, it's a risk. Going to the new market, it's a risk. There are always some risks, so you need to calculate those. And there's a lending myth. So first, banks don't lend anymore. Like we made analysis across thousands of founders, entrepreneurs. We asked them what do you think about loans and lending and bank loans and banks, etc. So this is what we got. Number one was banks don't lend anymore. They think that banks are all sitting in this island beautifully. They're not lending money to anyone. Partly it's true. But based on the numbers, we see the banks actually have the liquidity. They are there for 4,000 years. They know what they do. And actually half of their commission is going from half of the revenue actually is coming from the interest rate they earn from the loans they give. So banks have money they want to lend you. Without us founders, entrepreneurs, banks will be doomed, right? Second, I'm not lendable. This I hear all around. Banks not lending me, etc. In one of the master classes we had, you can actually find it on our website. There's a really good case we talked about when the founder thought he was not lendable, but then he did the homework and he found out there's actually a tractor, right? There's a farming tractor that was not just put on the balance sheet, and then he financed that because for some reason he didn't do that. The next one is financing weakness. We talked about this before. It's not a weakness, it's a strength, because the power is in those who borrow the money, because now I'm the one to press the button to give you money back, right? So it's a different mindset and mentality. Debt is risky. Again, there's everywhere risk, so it's not about the risk, it's about the calculation and the math and the logic behind borrowing. And you must pledge your house or soul. This is my favorite one. Yes, in some cases you need to provide a personal guarantee depending on the risks of the company, but if you have good, strong company, good assets, good revenue, and you do it properly, you do the fundraising strategy properly, which I talk about in my Telegram closed channel. Actually, it's only 44 euros per month. You can subscribe at any time. You can ask any questions. We can help you with many things. Then you can know that, if you have a proper financing strategy and you apply for 10 banks, then you have the best offer, and maybe one of them will give you a loan without any guarantees. This is how you do it. Okay, the fifth one, how it works. It's actually easy. You map where you are. It's point A. It's the same with the sport, with the health. You just map where you are based on numbers, right? The second, you define where you want to go, what kind of equipment you want to buy, what kind of expansion you want to make, what kind of hiring you want. So what for you need money. Then you do your homework. This is, nobody wants to do that. I wrote on my LinkedIn, 73 or 7% of founders, they don't like to do the homework. They don't want to do that. But again, look guys, we need to do that in order to move forward, right? So you clean your balance sheet, you do the valuations, you do the homework, you do the paperwork. Then you choose a proper financing strategy. Remember, it takes time. Remember, the debt fundraising takes 2 to 6 to 12 months, depending on the size of the project. For equity, it's 4 to 9. Of course, you can do it 1 week if you're somewhere in the Silicon Valley, or 2 weeks. But usually in Europe, across all the banks and lenders, from 2 to 6 to 10 months, 12, depending on the case. Then if you got rejected after you apply, it's great. Then you have homework to be done, right? If you got accepted, you negotiate favorable terms. That's why it's important to go to many lenders to have the best offer on the table. And again, look, at this stage, you don't need to borrow. You can just say, no, thank you, I will not take that money. But you have the options on the table, so you can see what's the best for you. This is important. Most of the founders think if you apply for a bank, then you need to borrow the money. No, it's not true. It's your choice. Then you sign an agreement and you get funding and you repay principal and interest. It's very important to do that, because if you do that once, you have higher, probability of borrowing even more money at better terms, because you have some pluses in your personal scorecard, right? Okay, so the more you try, the better you become at that. And actually the process is the same. If you go for the debt fundraising or equity fundraising, the mechanics of the process is the same, right? You do your cap table, you do a data room, you have a list of 200 VC funds, you score them, you make sure that they're really fitting your product, you map where you are on your revenue stage, and then you go. Okay, so the summary: you don't need to sell equity to grow. Debt is a leverage tool, not a danger. Banks care about the math of the business, of unit economics, not your story, not your vision. Of course, that's important, but that's the main point. The key is simple: return on investment must exceed cost of capital, and you should know the process, right? And for you guys, we have made a funding readiness diagnostic completely free on the website. You can spend 2-3 minutes, answer a few questions, and you will get, where you are, what kind of funding would be most appropriate for you. It's very, very free value for our founders, for people that are following us. Also, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the LinkedIn. We have very nice newsletters there, and see you later. Have a nice day.